people over, but yeah, not yeah.
I would ask, do you know the roots of Zionism?
Great.
How was it founded?
Great.
What is the history? And are you interested in learning?
That's a great one. Yeah, do you know something? Is a different question than would you like me to tell you what I know? Right? Okay, who else? Yeah?
On another topic, is that okay? Media. There was a time.
Wait, let me just pause for 1 second. Is there anybody who wants to continue with the other question before we move on, or a couple of people? Okay, so let's do that first, and then let's come right back to you. There were two over there.
I'd like you to give I've been accused of being a Zionist. I've been accused of being a Zionist, and it was used as a dirty word.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what makes you think that I'm a Zionist?
Mm-hmm.
You look like a Zionist.
I mean, it's like, what would I say I believe a Zionist is?
What do you believe a Zionist is?
I'm a little confused because I have heard so many things, and I believe in someone who believes in the state of Israel.
Uh-huh.
That's it.
Right. So, yeah.
I believe in the state, so he is correct. But to use it as a dirty word, how do I get that communication? I guess I am a Zionist.
So is the question, someone says, are you a Zionist? Or what's the...
And I say, I guess you're right.
Right, yeah, so here's this is the interesting kind of interplay, right? So when somebody says, are you a Zionist? Instead of just immediately saying, yes, and this is what I believe, this is an opportunity to say, what does that word mean to you?
Right.
Right? And then if they say, it means the willingness to allow for a Jewish state or the right for Jews to live in their ancestral homeland in a sovereign state, you go, yeah, that's the kind of Zionist I am, right? But in the case where somebody says it means genocide, apartheid, settler colonialism, then there's more work to do, right? And there are a lot of people, I think, who unthinkingly use that word, but also don't know that 90+% of Jews on earth believe that Israel has the right to exist as a sovereign Jewish state in the land in which it is. And so what they're actually saying, if they're anti-Zionist, is they're anti all but 10% of Jews, right? And so to get them to that point, you need to draw out of them the stuff that Melanie has been,
The best argument about genocide that I've heard is that genocide implies intention. And when Israel went into Gaza, it had nothing to do with intent, it had to do with self-defense. That's the best argument I've heard.
Right, and that's a fact, right? And so this is what Melanie has just gone through is rather than giving that fact, when somebody says, well, Zionism means you defend genocide, right? Right. Now you've got other questions to ask, right? Well, how do you define genocide?
And King David, in the time of King David, if he was confronted with Gaza today, this war would have been over in a week.
It would take a lot of historical and biblical knowledge to be able to make that comment. Okay, let's first come back to Shelley. Oh, okay, one more and then Shelley.
Thank you so much. This is just an adjacent question, and this is something that probably has been said to every one of us. I'm not anti-Israel. I just don't like the policy. So I know kind of a little bit how to answer it, but I would sure love your advice.
Well, I want to hear how you answer it.
I would say you have to separate the right of Israel to exist from its government. And say within Israel also, there's tremendous disagreement on how to protect itself and what the goals and values really are. And I get nervous talking to you, you can hear in my voice. But I think it's because I'm so afraid of the people who say, I don't hate Israel, I just hate its policy. I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm an anti-Zionist.
Okay, but those are two different.
They are different.
No, but what I'm saying is hating Israel's policies and not being against Israel is not what anti-Zionism is.
I do hear you say that, but that idea of people saying, I'm not an anti-Semite,
Right.
that I want to hear more about how to deal with that one.
Okay,
And the conflation of
and
Zionism.
you've heard people say to you, I'm not an anti-Semite. So can you just, one more second, keep the mic for one more second?
Sure.
When people say I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm just an anti-Zionist.
It's not quite that clear. I'm not an anti-Semite. How can I be an anti-Semite? I just don't think that Israel is doing this right. It's more along what you heard.
And can I just ask, if you were just, how effective do you think it would be to say, God, I hate what the Chinese are doing to their own citizens and the Uyghurs. I hate what Russia is doing in Ukraine. Why is there so much attention on Israel's policies and not the other
Before we
countries?
get to that, I just want to know what the problem is with that.
I get super worried when I hear somebody say, I'm not an anti-Semite, because what I really hear them saying is, I am an anti-Semite.
Right, okay.
I don't believe them. So that's what I want to uncover and get to.
Yeah,
Answer.
so-
Like,
so
if you're
this is
walking
good.
around saying you're not an anti-Semite, huh?
I think that there's this is sort of similar in a way to when people would say, I'm not a racist. And then they would say things that are absolutely not racist, but they're concerned that they're going to be called a racist, right? So you can't know whether the person is saying this because they really are concerned about being seen as an anti-Semite and they're not, because they have been told that if you criticize Israel, you'll be called an anti-Semite, right? That's one of the one of the Right, we do need to be careful, but there are a lot of things that are legitimately anti-Semitic and more, and so people have been using the term more and more. Well, I mean, we do have to use it when it's accurate. And so the fact that it has been accurate so much in recent times because of rising anti-Semitism, then there's also the anti-Semitic comment that people make, which is if you criticize Israel, you will be called an anti-Semite. So when somebody has that question, you don't know whether they're saying it because they just fear being called an anti-Semite because they've been told they will be if they criticize Israel, or if they are saying that to cover up for actually being an anti-Semite, right? So that's where the questions come in.
Yes.
Right? All right. I think the rest is probably for Melanie. Right? For them. Okay, oh yeah, Shelley.
Okay. Can you hear me? I keep thinking in my mind one word, media. If you look at Al Jazeera, BBC, unnamed stations here, and you ask yourself the question, when I see Barry Weiss at CBS, somebody gonna make a difference. The Jews, intelligent, successful, the state of Israel, sophisticated, how are we losing this media war? I just don't quite understand it. Social media, I can understand a little bit, but extant media, it has painted a really dark picture.
Okay, so first of all, we're losing because we're really bad at controlling the media. On a serious note, though, this is a broader issue than anti-Semitism to start. But just to look at anti-Jewish sentiment, like I said last night, it's popular. And when it rises, when people can elevate their status, when people can become popular by engaging in these kinds of attitudes and statements. And so we now have this accelerator called social media. And regular media is sensitive to what's happening on social media, so there's a sort of feedback loop. I don't have a solution. The thing that I think is most important for each individual to do is to know what's being said. So don't silo yourself in your media consumption, watch some of the stuff that infuriates you, so you know what's going on the other side. And then you at least have the language. You'll know what the words are. Like last night we were talking about, Andrew was talking about things having to do with groypers and tradwives. And these are things that a lot of people had not heard of here. But people who are immersed in these issues about what's going on in the extremist environment on the political right know the terms groypers and tradwives. And those on the left know different terms. And so it's important to know exactly, what the language is, so that when people are talking, it's not, yeah.
Can I just say one thing about the media? We had the opportunity to have lunch the other day with Marissa Stride, who's the CEO of PragerU. She was Candace Owens' boss. And she was describing the problem. These people that become influencers, they're not necessarily intellectuals or that bright even. They are actors. And they say what's going to get them clicks. What gets them clicks gets them money. And they get to a certain stature, as she did. And she used to say, I want to be the most famous person in the world. And Marissa thought at the time, well, if she's the most famous person in the world, that will only help us, without thinking, she's not going to be on so you're not going to be working on our platform if you're the most famous person in the world. Imagine having that ambition, by the way. And so what happens is they get to a certain stature and influence and power, as she put it, and then they'll flip. And they get so much more attention when they flip, and money, and clicks. Tucker Carlson, same thing. Yeah.
I think something that could be very helpful for us is how do we have the presence to recognize that our blood pressure is going up, that our stomach's in our throat at this point when we're in the middle of a conversation, but we really need to maintain the calm that you talked about, and we have to maintain, a friendly demeanor. Give us some good things that we can walk out with to help us recognize what's happening inside us and how to calm.
Yeah, okay, this is very good, actually. So as soon as somebody brings up this topic, you're going to be activated, right? So you can prepare yourself by mentally rehearsing. You have all these, and you have the handout to practice, right? So now you can read these things and mentally rehearse. When you get into a situation then where somebody says something and here's the topic, what's the first thing you think you're going to notice in your body? Anybody just shout it out. Your shortness of breath. Okay, what else? Tightness in your throat. Heartbeat. What else? Tension. Yeah. Yeah, right? All these things don't feel good, right? Thank you. Thank you. Right. Now, I'm going to just alert you that all of those physical sensations are the same physical sensations that people get when they're excited. Right? So if you're excited to do something, what are the physical sensations? Heart rate, tension, So how you feel emotionally about the situation, it informs how you interpret your physical experience. And Melanie is so good at this that even though she has those same physical, you get the same physical, yeah. And I'm not sure that she's ever sort of felt excited about having these conversations, but it's an opportunity. And so you can actually notice those physical sensations and set aside the negative interpretation that this is bad, that I feel anxious or I feel upset or I don't want to do this. And you can just remember that you came to this workshop because you wanted to engage in these kinds of conversations. You didn't want to run away from them. Right? So take a deep breath. And also, nobody's going to die if it goes badly. It's going to be okay no matter how it goes. Yeah.
So I would like to know how to handle the young, woke Jewish generation, not only who voted for Mamdani, but who come to my Seder, and they're my own nephews, and they're just all about belief and no data. And these kids went to Harvard and to Princeton.
So my way of dealing with this stuff is probably different from Melanie's, but I think Melanie should answer this after I do, because like Melanie does persuasion and I don't. That's not my realm. My realm is listening. And so I actually really believe when these are people who are close to you, when they're in your lives, when it's not just one opportunity to talk to them, but you've got multiple opportunities, let at least the first opportunity, maybe the first several opportunities, be just listening. Change the goal of the game. The goal of the game is not to persuade them in that first opportunity of many. The goal is to truly understand exactly what it is that they're saying. So be really curious and set aside whatever your interpretations are of their wrongness. You know, we generally speaking have the feeling that people are, I would go through a whole thing, but we don't have time, but people are either like ignorant or stupid or crazy or in some way malevolent when they have these very bad ideas, especially these ideas that are so damaging to Jews and to Israel. But set that aside, you can always take back that conclusion about them. And instead, think about the reasons that they might have come to this conclusion, you know? And then ask them when they say, you know, I like Mamdani or whatever the thing is. What do you like about him? What is it that you found compelling? And listen. And when they say something that is obviously idiotic, let it go. And then be curious about what that thing is that they just said that. So what do you think will happen when buses are free? Right? And then
Grocery stores are discounted.
and what are the things that, whatever it is,
Lines will
just listen. And then, and at a certain point, say, and I think there's something in here in Melanie's slides about reflecting back what people are saying, right? At a certain point, say, okay, I just want to make sure I'm tracking. So what you like about Mamdani, you tell me if I have this right, is blah, 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 blah. And you think that the benefit will be blah, 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 blah. And the key thing is what Melanie said about calm and not letting your face betray what you really think. And the way for your face to not betray what you think is to stop thinking it while they're talking. You know, what we think we're listening to when other people are talking, we think we're listening to them, but we're not really. What are we really listening to? Yeah, we're really
what you're going to say next.
What we're going to say next, or our argument, you know, why they're wrong. Oh my God, how could they possibly believe this? We're not really listening to what they're saying.
And Stephen Covey said it's a ludicrous notion that if you're not listening to someone, you're not hearing them, that you'll ever be able to persuade them of anything.
Right.
No, it wasn't Stephen Covey, it was Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, right. So the key thing in the situation in which you'll have more Shabbat dinners with them, you'll have more opportunities, is to listen and make sure they know that you completely get their position. And from that position, you become more trusted. And then you can have this kind of conversation with them.
Yeah, the one thing I also wanted to mention, when I started writing my column, I had, and you'll have this next, I just want to share this. I had two sort of North Stars. I would read Charles Krauthammer and Thomas Sowell and listen to Dennis Prager. And the two of them, Charles Krauthammer and Thomas Sowell, started out on the left. Krauthammer was the speechwriter for Mondale, when he ran for president. And Thomas Sowell was a Marxist, a self-proclaimed Marxist. And what got them to leave that political point of view and go to the other side was they faced reality. That I think that's the definition. What is it that they say, that a conservative is a former liberal who
Mugged by reality.
Mugged by reality, thank you. And mugged by reality. So Thomas Sowell worked in the government, and he was an advocate for all of these programs that he saw, these government programs that were designed to help people were actually hurting them. And he became the icon that he is, and Charles Krauthammer, the same thing.
I just want to say that
when people, and that's the point, when you get someone onto first base, that they will tell you, or they would have told you, Charles Krauthammer, I heard him speak once, it was a gradual thing. You're not going to always hit the home run, but if you get someone to first base, that's a start.
And I just want to say we're actually over time now. So if people need to go, completely understand it, but we'll hang out.
I just think a lot of the difficulty is in the semantics of the language, because the semantics is the scientific study of our language. I'm a speech-language pathologist. All the folks that you mentioned, the speechwriters and everyone else, they're in a different era. Today's kids and all of these groups that we're referring to, their semantics do not meet ours. And there are actually so many meanings to the word. Are you an anti-Semite? Are you a Zionist? How can you argue with somebody what they believe when the true meaning is not even written anymore? I mean, maybe I'm...
That's true of all of the words related to this topic. On the left, it's apartheid, genocide, ethnic cleansing, settler colonialism, etc. And on the right, it's Zionist-occupied government, Zionist puppeteer, Zionist this, Zionist that, and Jew, J-O-O. Yeah, so, and Judaism and Talmud. I mean, there's perversions of all of these things, and that's why these questions are so helpful when you're talking to people one-on-one. When you're talking to them, what do you mean by that term?
Hi, thank you for today. This was very interesting. I just wanted to reinforce the stories idea, and a few things that have worked with me is, well, now I spend a lot more time thinking it through in my head and deciding what point do I want to get across, because I'm only going to have a few seconds. But I was able to get somebody to understand what it feels like for me as a Jewish person to be experiencing this kind of anti-Semitism. And no one is going to say that's okay. And so I was able to soften someone because they were like, well, she shouldn't have to live with that. She shouldn't be afraid to travel and not want to go to her college reunion because of encampments. No one should have to deal with that. The other thing that I started to realize is that there's so much as a Jewish person that we grow up with that is so ingrained in who we are, this idea of the necessity of Israel, the importance of Israel. And there's a lot of people who just say to me, but you're American. And they don't understand that. And I explained to them, when I was growing up, we are the Jews of the diaspora. My family's not Polish, we were Polish Jews. We're not Russian, we were Russian Jews. We were not first-class citizens in these countries. So to say we don't deserve a country means that we should always be second-class citizens everywhere in the world. Why is that fair? And these are the only places where I've been able to make any progress.
Fairness or you can say that's not fair, you're persuading.
So,
when the blood pressure goes up, I think the most effective way is for each one of us to write the newspaper, to attack the position on social media, and if every Jew in America wrote the newspaper, Tom Friedman, when he writes that shit, call him on it And that's effective. And all of us, I mean, we missed the point. It is the media. And I want to know who the politician is in Aspen. Say it out loud.
It's easy to look up. Dwayne Romero won the Democrat primary in the Tuesday before July 4th. That's what started our conversation. She said Dwayne, her name is Margaret, and her kids went to school with my son, and she just happened to have Zane, and my son just started officer candidate school to be a Navy pilot. Oh, well, that's what got her on the military stuff.
So it's not a secret.
No, but I didn't want the point made in my article to be about a political, I'm going after a Democrat. I wanted people to see how to engage a persuadable. That's what I wanted to teach. And I didn't want to get people sidetracked by the fact that this person aspires to represent my district in Congress. And I don't know that Dwayne has the same lack of information as...
Can you say one thing about media?
You're absolutely right about writing. This is the point that Andrew, who's sitting over here, said last night. You're absolutely right about writing people. Write the New York Times about Thomas Friedman and anybody else who writes. You know, Nicholas Kristof is like the worst. Write to organizations when their employees are publicly saying crazy things. Write to them. Who do you write to exactly? Andrew has a list of some people to write to exactly, but when you are like writing to the New York Times, I mean, obviously you can write letters to the editor, but also there's a list of emails that you can write to.
So it's always good to understand the other side. And I have the hardest time understanding those Jews who I just can't understand. So let's take J Street. What does J Street believe? And what is a conversation one can have with them?
I know J Street, I'm not that familiar.
Yes, J Street is a lefty Jewish activist organization. They are against things like destroying the homes of terrorists. You know, when terror, I don't know if everybody knows this, but it's a policy in Israel when a terrorist is caught or killed, the home of the terrorist in the West Bank is destroyed. Obviously they can't, this is really a West Bank policy. That's one of the policies they're against. They're very much for I think a withdrawal from the West Bank. I don't know all of their policies. They have become essentially an anti-Zionist organization, though they weren't initially, but like Peter Beinart, also a very vocal anti-Zionist. And I'd say that the most charitable interpretation of their ideas is that Jews will be safer without an Israel and without a Jewish sovereign Israel. That is the most charitable interpretation of an anti-Zionist position, Jewish anti-Zionist position. And there's also a sort of part of that position, which is that for someone who uses, I don't know the religious scripture that they're relating to, but something about Jews are supposed to be in the diaspora, that, you know, that...
Until the Mashiach comes?
No, it's not that extreme, but it's more... Or the Goyim. Yeah, it could be. That's right. To be a light unto the nations, you are supposed to be in among the nations. You're not supposed to be the nation, right? So, I mean, there are all kinds of interpretations. What? Pro-BDS. Yeah, J Street is pro-BDS now. They didn't used to be. I mean, and so anyway, the point is to say that if you can understand that there are values that you share, that these people are not just, you know, Martians, there are some who are actually, connected to the Jewish, at least Jewish culture. I would say that it requires a disconnection from the idea of Jewish peoplehood to be an anti-Zionist, which is like the original anti-Zionist idea, was that there really isn't a Jewish people, there's a Jewish religion. So this is the thing, if you can hold in your mind that they may not be persuadable, I don't know, some of them may be persuadable, but that they don't have in mind a goal that 90% of Jews should be wiped off the face of the earth, and they and the other 10% should stay. That's not their goal. They're wrong in their interpretations, but they're not evil people, most of them. I'm sure there's some.
Shabbos Kestenbaum, were you here for him? Remember when he said, I don't deal with those people, they're not persuadable, basically. But he's like, I deal with the 80% who are. And I think that's my definition. Those are hostiles, don't engage them unless you have the potential to help them self-immolate in front of persuadables. And that's their only utility.
I actually think that there is a group that's in a gray zone, not to invoke the name of that horrible outlet,
website.
But young people who are much more likely to be anti-Zionist and to be socialist and to have all kinds of dumb ideas. They are not necessarily to be written off. Shabbos would write them off because he is their generation and he doesn't think that it's worth engaging with them. But as their parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents and friends of, we're their elders, and they have not been brought up in a generation that says that elders have any value. They've been brought up in a generation of revolution and a generation of apocalyptic thinking, burn it all down, and even if they don't believe all that stuff, that's the water they've been swimming in. And so, I have some sympathy. Also, they are the loneliest generation. It has never been the case that we've had such a lonely young generation. They're extremely lonely, they don't have social skills, they don't have a lot of friends, they don't have a lot of opportunity to go out and do things. And so if they're on a college campus and a whole group of people are going out marching, well, I'll tell you a very quick anecdote. I was guest teaching at NYU, and it was a class about free speech, and I asked the students, what speakers in particular would you want to protest? If certain speakers came here, who are the speakers that you would protest? And they kind of didn't understand my question. I had to kind of go back and forth with them. Who are the people that you would protest? And finally somebody said, it's not about the speaker. It's that if my friend wanted me to come and protest, I would go. And I said, even if you didn't have a problem with that speaker? And they said, yeah, that's what it means to be a friend. So that's their idea of friendship. Their idea of friendship has been completely screwed up by the idea of allyship. So they don't understand that they can say to a friend, I actually really disagree with you on that, but that's okay. Go, protest, do whatever. I'm just not going to do that. That's not how they experience their social life. Now imagine that there are kids who went through COVID and they're lonely and they were all impacted by the isolation of COVID, and now they're on college campus and there's an opportunity to have a sleepover with a whole bunch of students in tents on the quad. That's the encampments. So I think the ideology is a very, very small part of why these kids believe the things that they do. It's just because their friends believe it, and that's how they maintain their friendships. What I think the sort of task that we have is to create opportunities for young people to engage socially with other young people who are not like that. And if they don't have those opportunities, they're going to continue to be in anti-Zionist circles.